Get OPEL now.
Hello and welcome to This Week Back in the Day, and in this episode we're going to be talking about the time the Boys in Green snubbed principal team sponsor OPEL. Of course, this happened on the 26th of April 1989, and it happened straight after a very important victory for Jack Charlton and his Boys in Green and their World Cup hopes with a 1-0 win over Spain.
A booming clearance from Bonner, and that's broken nicely from Cascarino to Houghton. And it's still Houghton. Men in the middle. Whelan's there. And Frank Stapleton has done it!
Well, of course, it wasn't actually Ronnie Whelan or Frank Stapleton. It was an own goal from Michelle that got the 2 points and got the Republic of Ireland's World Cup Italy 90 campaign back on the rails again. We're going to be talking a little bit about what happened a bit before, a bit during, and a bit after. I'm Dave, your host, joined by Nick. Nick, welcome to your debut episode of This Week Back in the Day. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. I haven't been born yet for any of these, have I? Well, I suppose I have. I have, but I wasn't born for this. It was fascinating, kind of going over the bit of research. Dave gave me a bit of homework, and I did most of it. But I
think it was sperm mostly. I think it was sperm around this time.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't even say so. But look, I'm very looking forward. I'm very much looking forward to it. It's a fascinating one. It's one that probably has gone under the radar with younger listeners like myself. So I'm looking forward to getting into it.
Yeah, no, Eddie from Ireland Soccer Shirts on Twitter actually sent me a message. He said, "Oh, I'm intrigued about this one. Never heard about this one before." So Eddie, big shout out to you, by the way. Love your site. Although Eddie and I do have our little disagreements on Twitter, but the love
it's
is
all in
there.
the name of love. All in the name of love.
Yeah, song that by a great art. Anyway, so we are going to get into this. We're going to look at the background, and we're going to look at the aftermath and what could have happened, what almost happened, which would have changed the face of Irish football forever. Not a lot of people know this. This is real old football. People from the modern era are going to listen to this and go, "What? Really? This is old football, kids. This is from the 80s. This is real football, men's stuff." I think, anyway. Now, I don't want to say that because Graham Souness, got the trouble for saying that, Nick, didn't he?
Yeah,
saying it was a man's game.
Yeah. It's everyone's game. It's everyone's game.
Everyone's game, but this is men's stuff. Anyway, so the players' pool. The players' pool. What was the players' pool? Well, the players' pool was formed for the European Championships of 1988 in West Germany. That was Ireland's first tournament. And it was a system that was based on the English and German models for the big competitions, as if in the English and German teams, not page 3 or, Anyway,
well,
so yeah, sadly not. No, actually, I shouldn't say that. It's not very. We're not very PC, Nick, at the moment, are we? We're not getting.
When have we ever been PC, Dave? When have we ever been PC? Maybe I have. I had that little.
You
bit
have
a bit of panache, but look,
I certainly haven't been.
We know what to expect with you. I'd be disappointed if you weren't PC. You've set an expectation now.
If it was PC, you mean?
Yes. Sorry.
It was PC.
Poor grammar.
You're the teeth. Never mind. Right. So fees from the FAI were paid into the pool and then were divided amongst the squad. So basically, it was like winnings, essentially. Further they went in the tournament, the more bonuses they got, and it was split equally amongst all the players, which is quite rare. But that's it's part of the Irish team spirit. Commercial earnings for the pool were also extended to all the players who played in the qualifying games as well. Now, for the European Championships in 1988, the squad received between them 140,000 Irish punts, which equates to about $6,000 each, which is quite poor at the time. This was 1988, but
I wouldn't mind $6,000, Dave. I wouldn't mind £6,000.
I wouldn't mind £6. But anyway, the team did not want to make the same mistake for Italy 90, so they appointed a four-man panel to deal with the FAI. Messrs. Frank Stapleton, who had actually negotiated a contract for himself at Arsenal, Kevin Moran, who had a business degree, Liam Brady was a millionaire, and Ray Houghton, well, Ray Houghton was there, wasn't he? Played for Liverpool, I guess. Sorry, a lot of this is actually taken from the Team That Jack Built, which is a fabulous book by Paul Rowan. It is the precursor to Champagne Football, which I'm in, by the way. But this is a fabulous book. Try and find it on eBay. It's out of print. It's from 1994. It annoyed the hell out of Jack when it came out, but it is a brilliant book. Anyway,
you don't feature in it though, Dave. So that's
I don't feature in it. But that's
Can I
probably
just
why it's so good.
can I just say actually, just with that 4-man team, the Stapleton, Moore, and Brady Houghton, Stapleton ended up back with the FAI, didn't he? And Ray Houghton was on the selection panel, wasn't he, for
Yeah, they were actually.
Trapattoni? Was it for Trapattoni or
Yeah.
was it for Brian Kerr? Or was it
Trapattoni.
neither? Or was oh right,
No,
yeah,
it was
yeah.
Trapattoni. It was Trapattoni. Yep. Houghton helped broker that deal. Oh, there you go. A bit of trivia.
Yeah.
Anyway, but with the previous regime with Giles, Johnny Giles and Owen Hand, they were the previous managers before Jack Charlton. They had negotiated terms for the players, but they were quite small fees. Academic anyway, because we never qualified for anything until 1998. Going back to Italy 90, Charlton said he wanted no part, but he did ask the players, look, if you're going to negotiate, do it after you qualify for the World Cup, because I don't want a distraction. And you know what? You'll probably have more leverage. This is all a bit mad, isn't it? You'd never hear of anything of a players' pool these days, Nick, would you?
Well, actually, it's funny kind of listening to that, because something that kind of came to my mind. I watched the FIFA documentary, the one with Andrew Jennings, and one of the main storylines in that documentary is that he goes after Jack Warner, who was the CONCACAF vice president, and Warner was from Trinidad and Tobago. And you probably remember, Dave, that they got to the 2006 World Cup. They Dwight York,
Yes.
who was about 45 at the time. They Shaka Hislop, they Stern John. They had a lot of kind of cult heroes playing for them, but they were all kind of coming towards the end of their career. And they had a little bit of
life.
yeah. And they had a nice little pool coming through, because I think they done very well at underage level. And
yes.
Yeah. And
I remember
after
this
that,
now. Sorry, yes.
Yeah, and Leo Beenhakker, he was a Dutch coach. I think he managed Holland. I think he actually managed Holland in God, it could have been Euro 92 or World Cup 94. I think he definitely managed against us. But anyway, they had a decent little team. They had a decent little team coming through. But after the World Cup, their bonuses weren't correctly negotiated. And as a result, a lot of kind of the big names kind of stepped away from the national team. And a lot of players wouldn't turn up for international duty because there was issues with pay. So I'm not comparing us to Trinidad and Tobago, who, by the way, are the only country in the world that you can get 2 caps for just playing one game. It's my bad joke of the day.
You're never gonna hear. You never know what you're gonna hear on This Week Back in the Day.
Yeah,
these mad facts coming at you.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't call it a fact now, but yeah, it just shows how things can swing really badly when money isn't negotiated properly, when bonuses, when wages aren't negotiated properly. And as I said, I'm not comparing us to Trinidad and Tobago, but it's a similar situation that could have gone very south.
It was, and it almost did, and we will get to that. This is obviously the Republic of Ireland team in their prime with world-class players to boot. Obviously had a very good Euro 88. Did you know when they went out to Holland, I was going through the footage in Euro 88, 7 minutes away from semi-finals, offside goal, hit the post, that apparently the FAI did not have enough money for them to get to the next round, which would have been the semi-finals. So
no, I've heard that a few times. Yeah, I heard that they wouldn't have been able to pay for accommodation and travel and all sorts of things. So
no Ryanair, but well, there was Ryanair, but
so maybe the Dutch did us a favor. Who knows?
So anyway, moving on a little bit. Still, just before the game, just before the match against Spain at Lansdowne Road. So the team at this point were getting frustrated as the games were going on through the campaign. They were still hearing nothing really from OPEL or General Motors, GM.
Yeah, Green Machine.
Sure. There we go.
Yeah, we sponsored Ireland. Yeah,
we did. Yeah,
not just Enfield Town, but also Ireland. Apparently in 1989. Who knew?
Yep. When you were sperm and I was a toddler. So before the game, OPEL had erected a marquee at Lansdowne Road for the pre and post match drinks, and of course, players were normally expected as their duties to mingle with guests, the upper crust, network, this kind of thing. And of course, the Blazers, yes, but for this game, unbeknownst to everybody, the players had actually met in Dublin Airport, the hotel at Dublin Airport, and agreed to boycott the function. So, moving on to the match, we beat Spain 1-0. You heard the audio at the top of the podcast. Ireland were minus John Rollage, who was still mourning and probably still in shock over Hillsborough, which had happened a couple of weeks previous. And Frank Stapleton came into his place and had the game of his life, actually, Frank Stapleton did, which I don't think... More on that later. Good old Frank. And yes, it was a Michel own goal, which got the 2 points for Spain. Yes, kids listening, back in the day when it was men's football, 2 points for the win. None of this 3 points nonsense. 2 points for the win.
And footballer and Spanish footballers were called Michel.
We're called Michel, and he scored an own goal. Scored in their own net. That's how good they were. Shouldn't have a girl's name. Yeah, shouldn't have a girl's name anyway. Oh, going full on out here.
All right, Souness.
Yeah, actually, it is a bit cream. It is a bit, yeah.
Moving on.
I was trying to think of a funny quip, but who is it? It was Pogba's fault, isn't it? It was all Paul Pogba's fault.
Yeah, I blame Pogba. Yeah, I blame Pogba and the Kardashians. Simple.
Pogba. It's all Pogba.
Yeah.
Anyway, so as I said, that win would fire Ireland's campaign back on track after a bad start. We drew with Northern Ireland, Belfast, drew with Hungary, and we also actually had a 2-0 loss to Spain the previous year in Seville, which wasn't a full Ireland team. We had loads of injuries. I think John Sheridan played in midfield that day, and David Leary came back to the squad. But there you go. And this is the discussion bit. Discuss, Nick. What is Spain? Come on.
Spain, it's inferior Portugal, I would say.
Well, it's bigger. But
yeah.
So here they are. They're supposed to have a little chat with the guests, and they've said, no, up yours, we're not doing it. This is player power, isn't it, really? This is 1980s player power.
Yeah, this kind of echoes... there's little shades of that flight to Saipan, isn't there? You know, the journalists getting the flight with the players, and Roy Keane not really liking functions. There are little foretelling shadows here, isn't there? You know, of players maybe not liking the commercial side of what's being brought in and what they're being forced to do, and this whole idea that they're expected to mingle, when really they're trying to get their minds into a qualifier and trying to get their minds into getting to a World Cup.
Yeah, this is proper 1980s, this, isn't it? I mean, you don't really see it as much now. But yes, back then, the corporate side of it was coming into football in the 80s. And
where now players would eat it all up, wouldn't they? They'd eat these kind of things up, yeah.
This was new. It was still sort of at that apex where, we were still in old football. We were kind of coming into the apex of modern football. We weren't quite there yet. 92 is normally the year of modern day football, but we're kind of getting there. The players don't like it. There's actually a companion piece to this. Have you ever seen it, Nick? Que Sera Sera, the video that was made of this campaign?
Yeah.
Fabulous.
Have it on VHS, yeah.
Yeah, me too. Brilliant. Have a watch of it. It's fantastic. And it kind of shows you this side of it. And they're all giving out about, the money's ruining the game. People demanding $4,000 a week. It's just...
Little did they know.
Little did you know, there's Lee Brady going on. No, I think it was Stapleton, because he likes a good El Moan, doesn't he? And he's saying
Frank and Honest Day.
Frank, yeah. Well, if you want to hear somebody moan, just read his book, Frankly Moaning. But yeah, he starts going on about players aren't, I used to count my medals. They're counting their checkbooks.
Yeah.
You've no idea.
You have no idea what's coming up the corner. Yeah.
Look away now, Frank. People getting fucking millions a week. Oh, good. Well, that's where we're not too far from. So yes, but yeah, Que Sera Sera, the team that Jack built, the movie and the book, perfect. So let's get to the incident. After the game, Frank Stapleton, in front of all the players in the dressing room, goes up to Jack and says, we're not going to the function. This is how we feel. Negotiations, blah, 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 blah. Jack was aghast. According to Stapleton, which this is yet again in the book, the team that Jack built, Jack pointed out that, look, I've no contract with OPEL, but I'm plastered all over the country. And I remember this at the time. Jack's face was everywhere. It's like Big Brother. It's probably like it's like North Korea. So we had Jack with an opal of some form, or some deal, or you had an Irish player was advertising, was trying to flog you a telly, or they were trying to flog you like Lucasade or something. Do you know what I mean? Like, it was just, it was mad. And this would all stem from this, by the way. Yeah, he says, look, I don't like it, but I get on with it. Frank felt, look, the players have been exploited here a little bit. And you have to remember, these guys are all top players. They're all playing at the top of English football. They're all playing the top 6 teams. After the game, instead of going to the marquee, and hobnobbing with the, I don't know, the power lunchers and the, you know, the blue collar guys or whatever.
The Opelettes, yeah, the
Opelettes. The team gets straight back onto the bus and go back to the hotel. So fuck you, Opelettes. Jack later approached Stapleton at the hotel in front of a crowd. I would have loved to have seen this, and basically tore into Frank Stapleton. Allegedly, Jack may have had a few lemonades. He stated that that Frank, this is Jack, by the way, that Frank Stapleton, Liam Brady, David O'Leary had a huge influence over the team. And Stapleton said that was nonsense. Now, interesting. I think this is very interesting, Nick. Now, this is old football. This is when the manager ruled the roost.
Yes.
Fergie, Paisley, that's, you know, Brian Clough. They ran the club from top to bottom. Isn't it very interesting that Jack had issues with all three of those players?
Yes, and the thing with Jack was, I mean, look, I don't remember Jack managing Ireland, but I've watched so many documentaries and I've read so much about him. But he was a dictator in a way, wasn't he? But a kind one.
Be a nice, be a dictator, but be a nice one. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. A very kind dictator. And I mean, look, there's a history with these three players, isn't there? I mean, David O'Leary famously excluded from different squads, from different, starting lineups, and then scores the win penalty in Genoa. And then with Liam Brady, I mean, there were a number of differences. I mean, you know, he never really made it to a major finals, mainly because of injury, but there was a history there. Yeah, and suspension as well, absolutely. So, you know, there was a history with them lads, but I suppose it was a matter of how Jack was to handle these guys. And as I said, a nice dictator, but with these, there was always that bit more sternness, wasn't there?
Yeah, with Liam, just so, because people might listen to that, go, oh, what do you mean with that? Liam basically was really on the peripheral of the squad at his time, and it would be a few months later when he played West Germany in September, and Jack pulled him off after 20 minutes and basically ended Liam Brady's career.
Yeah. We did an episode of that.
We did. It's in the archives on greenmachinepodcast.com, greenmachinepodcast.com. And basically, as a warning to Frank Stapleton, who scored that game, to Tony Galvin, and I think Chris Hughton may have been in that game as well. But, you know, Chris is a gentleman. But yes, it was a warning shot to all those lads. So he did have issues with them. I think this kind of goes back to Jack being quite autocratic. It was just the way the game was back then in the 80s. Yeah. And he didn't like anybody questioning his authority or sort of, you know, kind of going against him a little bit. But, you know, he is dealing with seasoned, serious pros here.
Yeah.
Who aren't stupid. You know, like they're smart guys.
Yeah.
So
three of our best ever players.
Yeah, three world-class players, but they're quite bright, you know, and they did well for themselves in various facets of football. Liam Brady with the youth development at Arsenal. Frank Stapleton, I think, became like a scout for the FAI and world-class pundit for Sky. And David O'Leary, you know, he had a decent
Champions
time.
League semi-finalists as a manager,
They've all done very well. So anyway, continuing on, the barrage is not over. Jack's barrage had Frank Stapleton. At this point in the hotel, Ray Houghton shows up. And he joins in and goes, hold on a second, Jack. You know, these lads don't have a hold over us. You know, we made this decision as a team, which I believe, by the way, because, you know, the team spirit, which ironically Jack had actually helped build. But at the time, very newly appointed captain Mick McCarthy at this time, because Frank Stapleton was the captain at Euro 88. Kevin Moran was the captain for a little bit, kind of on and off, but Mick had sort of taken over fully at this point. He just sat there and never got involved. Yeah. And he sat there actually.
Mick.
Frank. Yeah, that's an interesting one. And it's a shame Martin isn't on this one to sort of have a dig at me over that. Although we do love Mick. But that's interesting, that, isn't it? That Mick McCarthy doesn't get involved. He's the captain. Yeah. And when you think of his dealings with Roy Keane, I am the captain. I need to get involved in this. Why are the players not sitting in first class? Why are you sitting in first class? To Mick, when they were coming back from Andorra, from Barcelona, you know, and then Mick obviously is like, oh, I'm not getting involved in this.
Yeah. I think Mick saw parts of him within Jack and vice versa. And I suppose he wanted to keep the peace. He wanted to kind of echo Jack. He wanted to kind of mirror Jack, and that kind of demonstrates it, doesn't it? Where Roy and Mick, chalk and cheese.
Top players, though. Have you noticed that with top players? Roy Keane being a top player, Stapleton
Yeah.
top player. They
Yeah.
fight. They
Yeah.
fight. They're not afraid. That's part of their character. They want better. And we've said this. We have said this over years of doing the Green Machine, haven't we, Nick? Of these kind of
Comfy
substandard
players.
Comfy
Yeah,
players.
yeah.
These guys aren't comfy. They want better and they fight for it. So I think that's a very interesting character trait.
But it was
So-
it was acceptable back then, wasn't it? You know, like as you said, it was more rough and tumble. It was
Yeah.
a tougher game on and off the pitch. You know, you serious characters. The money wasn't quite the same. Lads were fighting for absolutely
Yeah.
everything. You know,
And a
fighting
short
for
career.
contracts. It was shorter, even shorter.
Yeah.
We're
30,
now
31.
Yeah, where now things are very public, aren't they? You've the influences of social media. You can't really fall out, and if you do, you pay the price, don't you? And very few managers, like if you look at Fergie, his early days, yeah, maybe he forgave now and again, but as time went on, look at David Beckham, look at so many players that he fell out with. He was ruthless. Where back then, I think sometimes managers appreciated when a player was a little bit more outspoken, and maybe appreciated when a player was pushing for the best. Yeah.
Like, I don't mean men, they were adults. They were adults, weren't they? They were adults. They had to,
they were a different polish to today's footballers, really.
Like,
But again, more humble circumstances and more of a humble environment that they were playing in.
Because, for example, Kevin Moran got a business degree because he thought it's a very short career. Now he played till he was 38 for Ireland. Very smart when you hear him. He's very intelligent. You can just tell.
Yeah, he's well spoken. Yeah,
he's very very articulate, very well spoken. And he said, "I want to get a business degree because it's a very short career." So he has a head and the shoulders. These young lads today don't have a head and the shoulders. Everything's done for them. They don't even wipe their own arse, probably. Everything's done by a team of specialists. Their tweets aren't even sent out by them most of the time. But these guys had to fight for what they got because, agents weren't really coming into it. Anyway, we'll move it on. By the way, it's kind of funny that because at Italia 90, Frank Stapleton and Mick McCarthy would actually room together. And apparently Mick has said that Frank was very, very...
He's a fantastic lover.
I don't think that's what he said, but anyway.
Vice versa.
So anyway, after all of this, moving on there, the FAI would eventually pay 20,000 Irish punts into the players' pool on behalf of OPEL. Noel Quinn, speaking back on this is yet again all from the book, by the way, felt that the FAI and Jack had picked on Frank a little bit as a result. And but also Noel Quinn said something very interesting, because maybe Frank didn't help himself here, Nick, where he said, we should have said it as a team. Noel Quinn was only a whippersnapper at the time, but Frank basically just did it out of his own volition to Jack. No, this is what we're doing, Jack. Anyway.
I like it.
Yeah, men. Sorry, not men. Adults. Christ, I'm gonna get us thrown off. Adults, just adults. We're gonna meet it head on. But good hell, Frank. So there was a little bit of legal action. There was a threat of legal action. The players had respected Jack's demand and had left the negotiations until after the team qualified for Italy 90. It was a 3-0 win over Northern Ireland that pretty much put us there. We had to then go and I think Hungary had to beat Spain like 47-0 in Spain, and we had to lose something stupid in Malta for the last game in Valletta. So we were pretty much there. So Drury Communications, that was the agent for the players. The players didn't have individual agents back then. And he had set up a deal with Irish Permanent. And basically, the head guy of Irish Permanent was waited until the team were 2-0 up against Northern Ireland, as I said, which pretty much guaranteed qualification. And then basically got his mobile phone out and said, send the vans out. And the vans had full-size billboards with the Irish players wearing Irish Permanent T-shirts. As I said, flogging you everything. When OPEL found out about this, they went apoplectic. They took out an injunction on Irish Permanent and Drury Communications. But OPEL were suing Drury, not the players. They were suing the agent, not the players. But the players stuck with Drury. And OPEL were like, oh, shit. We're going to back down here a little bit. And Noel Quinn, speaking again in the book, said that OPEL had a deal with us when we played for Ireland, but we could do what we liked in our spare time. It went to a court case We will cover. This is a whole other podcast, by the way. The court case is very interesting. There's footage there. This was obviously November '89. We'll talk about that at some other point. The players will subsequently receive 500,000 punts, Irish pounds for Martin when he's listening, into the players' pool from commercial activities, which were all, as I said, equally divided. I mean, 500,000. That's like a weekly wage for a top player these days.
It's player power, isn't it? And as I said, and Niall Quinn as well. Just it's interesting hearing that he's weighing in there as well. Look at his successes commercially and within the, I suppose, the football management side of things. I don't mean like football as a football manager, but managing clubs as CEO. With Sunderland, with the FAI for the brief time. So it just shows how shrewd the players were and how they engineer change.
Yep. A good change. And have you ever noticed that?
Absolutely.
I'm not the biggest fan of Roy Keane.
Really?
Yeah, I know. I know.
Never knew.
Tell some of the lads to follow the page. But anyway, that's another story of another fucking day. But the lads have to fight with the FAI. They've had to fight different. It doesn't matter what generation. It doesn't matter that Ireland were one of the best teams in the world, at this time. The players still had to fight for stuff.
Mm-hmm. Where now it's the opposite. Now they're terrified of the FAI. Maybe not so much now, but
not so much.
over the last decade or so.
Yeah, it was
terrified. 2 decades.
Might have something to do with the man in charge. But anyway, allegedly, don't want to get sued here again. Well, not again, but you know what I mean. Only one member of the Green Machine has been served with. Never mind.
And he's not here to defend himself.
He's not here to defend
himself. He's probably defending himself in court.
Do you reckon that's why we don't see him on a Monday?
Possibly.
That's all lovely. And people, that's it. That's the end of the podcast. No, it's not. Because there's one little extra bit. And this is what I found fascinating. So, the effect on Jack. Jack had felt powerless at this time. We spoke earlier on how he's from a period of autocratic ruling from managers. You rule the roost. You play my way, or you don't play at all. You do as I say, or you go out the door. It's very, very simple. Very little player power in those days, but player power was, as we've just discussed, was creeping in. This is the 80s. It wasn't there yet. Jack didn't feel very comfortable with all of this. And then, apparently, if OPEL hadn't have backed down, the players were going to further boycott OPEL, and they were actually going to boycott the OPEL-sponsored FAI Player of the Year Awards. And Jack felt, Nick, that if that had happened, he would have had absolutely no option but to resign.
Yeah.
So
phenomenal reading that earlier. Yeah,
isn't that mad?
Could have changed the course of history altogether.
Yeah, we actually could have played some decent football. No. Jack could have. We were qualified because the 1989 awards were like very late 19. I think that was actually the first FAI award, so I'm not mistaken. Sure, somebody on Twitter there will let us know if you do. But yeah, we could have had a team of the World Cup with no manager. That's mad, isn't it?
Yeah, unbelievable. As I said, fascinated reading that earlier. Could have altered everything.
It really could have.
Yeah.
But there you go. Thankfully, it didn't happen. But yeah, he was. That's how strongly he felt about it. But how did we get on with the World Cup? Well, you'll have to, if you haven't heard about it, I mean, crawl out of your rock, and I'm sure we'll cover it at some stage. But yeah, listen, we're going to wrap it up there, Nick. Thank you very much for joining us this week in Martin's absence. I'm sure we'll get you. We got a couple coming up. I'm sure you'll want to elbow yourself in on. And thank you very much for listening at home. Please join us on the next one. If you like what you hear, give us a review. Hit us a nice little subscribe on YouTube, on Spotify, Google, Apple. You can also follow us on the Facebook page, Twitter, Instagram, and this and every other episode is also available on thegreenmachinepodcast.com, thegreenmachinepodcast.com. We can also get articles, and we have a shop, don't we, Nick? We have a shop.
The shop.
Shopper.
Yeah.
And Martin, if you're listening, that is Irish for shop.
Yeah, I was going to say we have to be diverse here, and we have to include Martin, so don't use the Irish word. You wouldn't have a clue what we're going on about.
Just shop. We have badges, we have a jersey and everything. And it's all to support the pod. We love what we do. But, shit ain't cheap. It's not free. Is it? No, it's not. And anyway, so if you want to support the pod, please head over to our shop. It's thegreensheetpodcast.com/shop. Anyway, we're going to leave it there. We're going to wrap this one up. And please join us on the next one. Thank you very much. Good night and God bless.